Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of Miriam Talks About Things. Now in today's episode I would like to first talk about the books I've read since the last episode and then actually do a tag. But again, first let's talk about the books I've read. I mentioned that I would like to start The Battle for Perfect by Helena Duggan. Turns out I started it and finished it and it was amazing. So The Battle for Perfect is the final installment in Helena Duggan's Perfect series that follows the friends Violet and Boy. So again, as it is the last book, I don't want to give too much away, but basically what this book is about, it is taking place after everything's settled, after the events of the last two books. And then mysteriously famous scientists go missing and the duo starts to investigate, and turns out they soon have to save their town from a zombie army. So if you would like to know what's up with that, you can go and read some more thoughts, spoiler free on my blog, and also go pick up the series. It was amazing. I thought it was a great conclusion to that series, and I think it did what I hoped it would do. Then after that, I was a bit lost and didn't know what to pick up because I got really invested in that series, and it's definitely one of my favorite. The Trouble of About Perfect, I think that's the name, should have known. It's actually my favorite in this series and one of my favorite books of all time. So I was a bit lost. Then I decided to pick up poetry collection, and that is Depression and Other Magic Tricks. It's been on my TBR for a bit, and I thought it would be a good way of getting back into the swing of things with a poetry collection. Now, what I love most about this collection is its language. I think the poet really does a great job with using her language. Sometimes I got a bit confused by the narration and felt a bit lost of what is going on and what she's trying to say, but I think that's because of the stream of consciousness style that sometimes worked perfectly and sometimes I just felt lost in the narration. And I think a lot of that had also to do with the style of the format of the poem sometimes, but otherwise I would definitely recommend it. There is a list of my favorite poems on my Goodreads review, so if you would like to check out, it's on there. Now, then I started a graphic novel, and that's called Sunny Side Up. After finishing the graphic novel, I realized that this is the first in a series, which I will be definitely continuing since I loved this installment quite a bit. In this graphic novel, we follow Sunny as she is going to spend her summer in Florida at her grandpa's house. She actually had different plans for her summer, but now she is kind of fine with it because she thinks, well, Florida, that means Disney World. Turns out her grandpa lives in a retirement community and she's going to spend the summer there. Fortunately, she quickly befriends Buzz, whose father works at the retirement community, and they sort of start to bond over comic books. The reason Sunny is in Florida is because something is happening in her family and they have to deal with that, and they couldn't go through with their actual summer plans. And they still wanted to have, for Sunny to have a summer on her own. Now, I really, really enjoyed how it dealt with that topic. It gets very clear, so I don't think it's a spoiler. But if you don't want to know, maybe skip ahead a little bit. But again, I think it's pretty clear, or at least for like a more adult reader, since the audience, I think, is younger or like older children. But I think for a more adult reader, it's pretty clear that her brother actually suffers from substance abuse. So that's sort of the thing they have to deal with. And Sunny coming to terms with how the family deals with it, how she has to deal with it, since she deeply loves her brother and definitely also idolizes him. And I thought it was just well done. And the author note at the end of the book was explaining it perfectly and the reason behind it. So I also wrote a little review on that, and I'm going to leave that in the description box. I've been going into a bit more depth on there. So if you'd like to check that out, I will leave that alongside my review of The Battle for Perfect in the description box. Now, again, as I said, I would like to do a tag on here, and I've not been doing tags a lot, even when I was creating like video content, I guess. But my dear friend Sophie over at Redhead Reading, her channel will be linked in the description box, sort of tagged me on Twitter because she was filming this video where I wasn't creating content, and she thought of me once she's uploaded it. And it is quite an interesting tag, and I think I have some different answers, and I definitely would love to answer those questions. So that's what I'm going to do. And yeah, let's start, and then I'm going to say something about tags in general after that. But first, let's get into the questions. Question 1 is, by the way, haven't said that, the best books you've never heard of tag. And the idea behind this tag is to talk about more obscure books you've read. And the first question is, are there many books that you've read that are below 250 ratings, below 100, any under 25, under 10? So I have 264 read books on my Goodreads. Of course, those are not all the books I've read in my lifetime, but I wanted to keep that for the books I remember something about and can say something about. Out of those 264, 65 books have below 250 ratings. 47 have below 100, and 24 have below 25, and 14 have below 10. So I have actually quite a few books that have ratings, not so many ratings. So that was quite interesting, but also not surprising. But we will get into that with question 2. And that is, how did you hear about the most obscure books you read? Now, most of those books are either poetry collections or German novels, or German books. So I do still read in German. German is my first language, and I do put them on my Goodreads. So a lot of those books that have a lower rating in numbers are German books, because I think the German community doesn't really use Goodreads that much, and if so, they are also reading mostly English books. So that was actually quite interesting. But now on to how I hear about those obscure books. And again, with poetry, if it's poetry, I seek out poetry actively. So I think that their collections the collections that are on there is a reflection of like how I seek out poetry. I don't just use like Amazon or stuff like that, but I also go into independent publishers and smaller publishing houses of poetry. So those come from there. The German books are either from my local bookstore. A lot of them, and the most obscure ones, I guess, are from my discount bookstore. It's an online bookstore where they sell out of print or books you don't find cheap, or books that have some sort of how do you say it, are not in perfect condition but still readable. They sell them there. So that's what I get, a lot of the obscure or more pricey books for a very cheap price. So I get those mostly from there, but also again local bookstores and stuff like that. Now, question 3 is interesting because it says, what are some of your favorite unknown under 250 rating books that you've read, and why should more people read them? Now I'm going to try and stick with English books here, and I was surprised by 2 of my picks. I will let you know what those are now. Now the first one is one of those poetry collections I sought out. I found by seeking out more smaller presses, and that is Still Falling by Sara Hirsch. Don't know. Will be left in the description box. And this collection is actually one I really enjoyed. It's a modern poetry collection, very great sort of slam poetry type of poems, very much intended to be performed but perfectly stand on their own. So I would definitely recommend that one. Then the next is one that actually surprised me, and that is A Queer Little History of Art by Alex Pilcher, because I am an art history student and I think everyone should be interested in art maybe. But I think it's quite a small book. It, as the title says, is a history of art looked at through a queer perspective, looked at how artists do interpret the queer experience and how their own queer experiences influence their art. And I just thought it was so informative, so well made, and so well written. So it's definitely, like, if you are even in slightest interested in history, in art history, or like in queer history, please pick it up. It really is great. The next one is actually another collection, and that is Hot Teen Slut by Christine Aptowitz O'Keefe. And it's quite a special poetry collection. I think it's semi-autobiographical, kind of. It's basically inspired, and I hope I get that right because I've read it a while ago, by the author's first job after college, I think. And that was to write scripts, if I'm correct, for pornos. And those poems in this collection are inspired by challenging what we often see in pornographic content. And I just thought that was so interesting and so unique, and I really, really enjoyed it, and it made me go seek out more of the poet's work. So there's that. My second surprise, and the last book I'm going to mention here is Pictures at an Exhibition by Camilla McPherson. I think this book has not so many ratings because it's quite an older book, but not yet the classic. So it's in that in-between stage where people probably didn't use Goodreads that much. But this is actually the book that got me back into reading. I'm quite unsure about the plot of it, but I know it follows two perspectives, and I think one of the women was alive during either World War II or World War I. And it's like one of those stories where a woman from the future finds out something about the woman in the past, and it is influencing her life in some way. But I really, really enjoyed it, and I still remember the experience of reading it. Clearly not too much about the plot, but it's the book that got me back into reading, so I always definitely recommend it. Now some sneaky mentions are actually The Battle for Perfect by Helena Duggan, but of course it doesn't really have that many ratings. It only came out a couple of days ago. And Deep Light by Frances Harding, that doesn't even come out until October 31st. Please pre-order it and read it. But yeah, those have a lower number of ratings, but for logical reasons. Now, question 4 is a more broader question, and that says, any other thoughts? And it gives you some examples, and I would like to answer those. The first question is, do you think the most popular books you've read are usually better than the least popular ones? Now, maybe to give you a perspective on that, and maybe that already answers the question. One of my absolute all-time favorite books is one that has a lower number of ratings, again because it's a German historical fiction. And one of my least favorite books of all time has ratings that are lower in number. So I don't really think no. I'm usually someone who is more critical of picking up a popular book than a more obscure one. So there's that. No, I don't think that they are better. Not at all, actually. Why do you think your least read books are so unknown? Again, for me that has to do with the fact that they are in German, and even obscure sometimes in the German speaking circle, and they are not translated into English. So, and again with poetry, because they are from more smaller presses. And then it says, do you like reading unknown books or popular books better? Well, generally I like to read, but I do think that I'm less hesitant to pick up a lesser known book than a popular book, actually. But again, if a book interests me, it interests me. But lately, actually, I've been picking up books that are quite popular. For example, I was in the bookstore last week, and I picked up Wilder Girls by Rory Power, I think. And that's a book that I would never have picked up if I wouldn't have seen it on booktube. So there's that, I guess. And then the last question is, do you want to read more obscure books? Well, yeah, of course, I do want to read more books. So I plan to read more obscure books, more popular books. So yeah, there's that. Question 5 is, who do you tag? And I picked 3 people. And the first one is Julie over at Pages and Pens, because I really would like to see her answers to especially how many books have low ratings for her. Then I would also like to see Jen over at Remembered Reads, her answering those questions, because her channel is one of those channels where I specifically go to for more obscure books. So there's that. And same goes for Kara over at Wild Book Garden. I always find something I have never heard of on her channel. Therefore, I would like to see her answers. So that was the books you've never heard of tag. Something about tags. I wasn't planning on doing tags on my podcast, but when I read the questions and answered them here, I realized it's quite fun actually to do so on a podcast. So if you do a tag, please consider tagging me, I guess, if you would like. Not all tags are made for a podcast, but I will definitely check it out if you tag me, and I would love to answer the questions. So yeah, that was it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what your favorite more obscure book is, and I will hear you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. Bye.